Hi, everybody. How are y'all doing? It's been a minute since we did a stream. Hello, my name is Samantha Puck. I'm one of the cast members of Death to Divinity, the first all-fat, all-queer TTRPG actual play. We are here to do our panel Fat Gay Fables. We're going to talk about centering fat and queer heroes in TTRPG. We want to say thank you to Gayming Live for having us. Gayming Live is presented by Healthysexual from Gilead, I think, Sciences. And the community zone, which is where all the panels are happening, is sponsored by Remag, a new place to connect with gamers in your community. Thank you to both of them for their support in making this happen. So that's me. That's my intro. And if you haven't seen Death to Divinity or you've forgotten, I play Brine, who is the biggest mess probably in the show. And I'm going to have everybody else introduce themselves. Let's start with Molly.
Hello, I'm Molly Schaefer. I play Gideon, who at first I was gonna fight you on Biggest Mess, but I think maybe you've taken it from me. You've wrested it from my hands. But yeah, I
It's
play
a real
Gideon.
back and forth, I think, between us, though. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we're all sort of fighting for that crown, that Fall Guys crown of who's the worst. Um, so that's my intro. That's me.
Great. Katie May.
Hi, I'm Katie May. I am your gay master. I am one of the creators of Death to Divinity, and I am in charge of making the mess that you play in. I don't know how we want to put that. I don't know how we want to. Oh boy, yeah. No, I'm so excited to be here today. I have been playing TTRPGs since 6th grade. And we're still going strong, still doing the dang thing. Really excited to talk about just how important being fat and gay with these folks specifically has been to my life. Excited to do that.
Hell yeah. Lyrica.
Hi, I'm Lyrica, and I play Current in Death to Divinity, who, King of the Sharks? King
Yes.
of making very in the moment decisions. Yeah, that's me.
King of my heart as well.
Oh
Also,
my
yes.
God, no.
Julian.
I'm Julian. I play Kaylin, who has made some interesting changes in his life now, going from just being a prince to kind of learning how to lead and to, make big decisions that he's never had to make before.
Julian's also our executive producer, but he
Yeah.
wants to humble
EP.
himself.
Side note.
Just as a note. So all right, cool. Welcome everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. So for the next hour, we're going to be talking about centering queer and fat heroes. And I think just to jump things off, I want to know from everyone here, what about Death to Divinity most excites you as a TTRPG player?
Well, oh, someone else
No, you.
talking? Or is that
No,
me?
you.
Okay.
You do it.
I just the fact that it centers fat people to begin with, which I feel like you never see anywhere. Let alone the TTRPG space. I was thinking about this before the panel, but I was like, what other fat characters do I see anywhere? And it was hard to think of any. And then again, not to slander one of my favorite NPCs of all time, but I was like, Galir from D20. It's a joke that he's fat, and that made me sad. So that's a thought I had before this, where I'm like, I know that it's also eating yogurt, and that's fine. But I was like, man, where? I was like, the fact that he's a fat elf is a bit. And I was like, we have actual fat elves in our show, and it's not a joke. They're just fat elves that exist and are cool and our heroes, and I like that. And I like that our show has that, and you don't see that other places. I hope to see it more places, frankly.
Ditto.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing for me too, is it's hard enough just to see that represented in general, just on a very baseline, bare minimum, not being made fun of or not being the butt of a joke, to going to a community in a system like D2D where it's innately there. And not only is it just innately there, it's the centering of it. I think that is so important too. It's the, hey, you get to come here and be exactly who you are and tell this story, and you are legitimately the hero, which feels fantastic.
Hell yeah. Julian, KM?
Yeah, it's nice to have like a safe place to come and play and just be yourself and feel like feel good about yourself, but also feel good about providing that representation for other people as well, who, as like there's just so little of it that it's nice to be able to kind of be able to do that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's quite important after a lifetime of being readily encouraged to find someone to be a sidekick for. I think is the best way to put that. I mean, I should have not known what Duff stood for at the tender age of 14. I should have not known this. This should not have been a phrase I was familiar with. This should not have probably been a movie that was was released. You are it was so exciting to be able to take a moment with these incredible people and say like, hey, I think we all deserve to be so here like heroes for a while. And I love that. It's not about you being fat, it's about you being heroes. I remember like reading fantasy books as a child who was also like actively in theater school, which was unfortunate for her at the time. But I remember I would like read these fantasy books and I'd be like, okay, so if this gets a movie adaptation, because I'm so thoroughly obsessed with the movie adaptations of like the Hunger Games, um, it's just like, what character could I play? And it's like, oh, Milburn, the fat best friend who dies in Act One. Like, it's not. It's very
No!
Milburn. No, Stranger Things help. It's very. It's not good, and it's fine if it's once, but it's not fine if it's everything you have to offer. A large percentage of the population. And so being able to center us as protagonists and take that into our everyday lives is something that's so incredibly exciting and vital to me.
Yeah, I think for me, like as a kid growing up in the 90s, like so much of the media that I, ingested was very like, if you're fat, you're a bad person and you'll never be loved. Like Shallow Hal made a lasting impact on my psyche.
What is a shallow Hal? I will learn this on my own
You don't
time.
need
Sorry,
to
I'm
know.
realizing that
If you're
this is not
if you haven't been burned by that, you don't need to be
okay.
burned by it now.
Okay.
But like as as an adult and getting to participate in this space where it's like, no, like, you are every part of you is core to what's happening in this universe. And I just think that that's so cool and it's so refreshing. And that leads us into our next question, which is how has centering fat and queer heroes in Destiny impacted you as a person? I think for me, it's just really allowed me to like fully embrace my most fantastical ideas of like what I can do and also what the characters that I create can do. What about y'all?
Um, I feel like I've been able to find out more things about myself that are kind of cool that maybe I've tossed to the side because like especially being very new to like TTRPG and D&D and all of that in general, it was like there was a lot of my character that has me intertwined in there too because it's my first time making a character too. And so finding out stuff about Current and in an environment where Current is just allowed to be who they are and do all these really badass things has helped me in ways be like, hey, like I kind of do badass things too, and that's cool. So that's been like a really big thing. It's definitely made me see that like I have the skill to be able to tell these stories with these other super awesome people that have been doing this way longer than I have, and just seems so amazing. Like it's definitely given me a safe space to do those things where I think that might have been hard in other tables which weren't centering the things that we do.
As a fellow newbie to tabletop games and such, I really feel that having D2D was a good way for me to get into to gaming this way, because it is a safe space and I am able to just be myself. And it has given me the confidence to then be able to go into other spaces and play games. I think, although it's like a mixed bag, I guess, because like it's given me the confidence that I can be a player at a table. But it's still like, if you don't know what you're walking into at another table, it can be kind of scary. And so it just makes me appreciate Death to Divinity and this amazing group of people that much more.
Yeah, kind of what Julian was saying. Like, it's really nice to play at a table where I am not silently bracing for like some bullshit, Like, I'm not the whole time we're playing, like, waiting for someone to say something that I find dehumanizing or gut wrenching. Oh my god. But like, like, and I think like that's hopefully our community feels that too. Like, you're, safe playing games with us and watching us play games for you. And on like a more personal note, I'm an artist. I like drawing a lot, and being in this campaign, I have practiced drawing fat bodies more than I ever have in my whole life, and I feel like Bozo the Clown for not having done it sooner. But hey, if you ever want to get to body diversity with your art, make your character like look like you or have a different body type, and then your obsession of that character will lead you to drawing lots of, I don't know, it's been really nice. That's just a little side note. It's been like nice for me drawing fat people more often. And again, I was like, why did I, like, when I draw myself, I would like try and emulate my body type, but it was just so unpracticed. And it also helps me with like looking for other artists, being like, who draws different looking bodies out there in the world? Not enough people.
Shout out to artists who draw fat bodies. Hell yeah.
Yes. Our artists Mackenzie Mullins and Zamil, who have done art for us. Incredible. So,
and Molly, you spoke to this a little bit, but how do you hope that Death to Divinity is impacting others, especially people in the TTRPG space who, like myself, and I think like others at this table, maybe it never occurred to them to be like, oh no, like my character can look like me. that can be a thing. So how do you feel like we've impacted others, or how do you hope that we have?
I would say, like, I hope that we've impacted others in a way that, like, I could say, okay, so like for me, when I was looking at before D2D, there was this in between where I was like getting interested in TTRPGs, but like had this list of things of like, what if I go to the table and I experience this? Well, I don't look like these other people. How, and it's like that was so much of a hurdle for getting into the space. And I hope that D2D can break that down for people a little bit. I hope that it allows people, not that anybody needs permission, because that's part of the whole thing. I hope that it makes people feel like they don't need permission to walk into this space and say, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to play. And that's just it. It's going to be that. So I hope that it allows people or makes people feel more comfortable to do that. I hope that it gives like a real life example for people to be able to see, like, I can have a character who is doing all these amazing things and telling these amazing stories that I see other people tell in the body that I have. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Lyrica said it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Molly, please.
I was just saying Lyrica said anything I could say, but like way better. It's yeah, like I hope you feel confident to like carve out that space for yourself when you're playing with friends in your personal life, like anything. I hope seeing us do it has made you feel more equipped to do it for yourself, because you deserve that. Everyone deserves that. Especially when you're like playing a game, you're just trying to fucking have fun. You should be able to have fun and feel safe and not, again, be constantly bracing for some horrifying impact. Which I'm sure has happened to all of us, like at some point at other tables or just like in life. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I feel like fat folks are often encouraged to set their bar as low as possible and to be appreciative of anything that comes and knocks that bar over. Um, I definitely think like, yeah, in the vein of what Molly is saying, that like set your expectations high for a good, caring, lovely, beautiful time told with people. You are so passionate about like their love for stories as well, right? Like you deserve to sit at a table that feels like your own Critical Role, feels like your own Dimension 20, right? That should feel it should feel that great. It really, really should. And I also think that like I feel like I'm on the other side of this like unfathomable bridge. And now that I've crossed it, I like turn around and I'm like, how did I even get across this bridge? When I like before I started this show, and maybe this is because I'm a GM, right? Like in my head, like my internalized fat phobia, my internalized like white supremacy, because every person really who was raised in the US has some amount of internalized white supremacy that they have to figure out truly. Uh and like to me in my head, those things, those like very insidious things that like when I was in middle school, right? Like not being willing to like wear a tank top in the summer, right? Because I was too fat for that. Like, and how like hot and miserable I was because of that, you know? It's like the amount of like rule that had over my life and how I lived and how what the decisions I made and what I thought I was like worthy of and all of those things, right? Like as a GM, those insidious forces like have they are creatures in my head, right? And I like think of the size of like of fat phobia like as this monster who was huge and looming and blocked every path. And now when I regard my like internalized fat phobia, because like getting rid of it completely, I think is like most everyone who is like dedicated to fat liberation. I think like everyone that's like the dream with like an acknowledgement that you may never truly be rid of it due to the society like you are in, you know? And I think like the size of it now, it's gone from this like encompassing monster that was how large I perceived myself to be. This inescapable, like gluttonous entity is now just like a little rat that like runs around my mind sometimes, like a tiny little obnoxious rat that I'm like, okay, go away though, right? And like I think about those two beasts that I've dealt with and how different they are and how better my like how much freer my life is because I am contending with one thing and not the other. How much more space in my life I have for beauty and love and all the things I am like worthy and deserving of. And I think truly like the only thing that I wish for others when watching our show is like, hey, that like monster who you have been raised to consider like your big bad, your end villain, right? Like, how many young fat kids had daydreams about like getting in a car accident and waking up thin? Like, that is so hauntingly common, right? Like, that monster that you've been fighting forever, maybe, depending on when your journey started, right? Like, you deserve to vanquish it. And you can, right? Like it can be just another piece of like just like rummage in your shitty little junk drawer that you find on occasion, right? Like it can be that, and you deserve the freedom of it being that. And I oftentimes look across this like this bridge that I know I've crossed, right? I feel that amount of freedom and joy in my day-to-day life, and I'm like, how did I do it? And how do I give it to others, right? Like that's always my number one question, and I'm always be striving to find it. But I know that that's what I want. That's what I want so badly for others.
So when we started Just Divinity, we launched with quote quote the world's greatest role-playing game, and then in season 3 we switched systems. We transitioned from Dungeons and Dragons to Thirsty Sword Lesbians by April Kit Walsh, and I know that for me, that transition, even though we had been playing a very like role play forward, character forward, less crunchy, less dice focused version of Dungeons and Dragons than a lot of people play. I think when we switched to Thirsty Sword Lesbians, I became very aware of how much more I could do because it felt like there were fewer restrictions and fewer things that I had to keep track of. And so I felt like my opportunity to like make big moves and to focus on like what Brian wants and what Brian is doing expanded. And I'm curious how the rest of you felt, especially Lyrica and Julian, since you're both much newer to the TTRPG space.
Boy howdy, did it challenge my storytelling abilities. I'd say that is the number one thing that it has. I had so much focus and attention. I mean, definitely on Kern as a character, but so much behind the scenes was learning the rules, learning what I had to do, keeping track of this. And each time that there was a new level and a gaining of more things, it was okay. Now I have to learn this and remember that this goes with all the other stuff. But don't shove it in a backpack because you'll lose it. Don't just jam your assignment down there. You got to keep it nice. Which I mean, I don't get me wrong. Like I have thoroughly enjoyed both systems that we've done, but this has definitely took me to a place of okay, we're going to get rid of a lot of the keeping track, like Sam had said, keeping track of things, but we're adding this additional element of you get to tell the story. Now what is that story? And it's a different set of learning how to do things, but one that has allowed me to kind of flourish current in a way that I had kind of hoped current would be when I had first created them. And it's fun getting to do that now, especially as we're coming to these really big peak moments in this series. So that's been challenging, but also a lot of fun.
Yeah, when we first made the decision to switch over to Thirsty Sword Lesbians, I was very nervous because I felt like my role playing skills of in when we were playing D&D, that my role playing skills were kind of lacking, but at least I was able to kind of contribute something and be in a battle or do whatever I was going to do. And then knowing that I was going to have to focus so much more on role playing, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I could do this. But it's been a lot of fun because you do get to kind of take a little bit more control of the narrative, and there's more kind of freedom in a lot of the things that you can do. And I mean, it also helps that like either way, whether we were playing, in D&D or TSL, Katie May is very, very flex, right? Very like rule of cool, right? Like you can kind of, if you can convince them that like what you're doing or, whatever is like going to work or whatever, like there is a healthy amount of flexibility, which is fun.
Yeah, it definitely, because for us we switched like mid-season, right? So not it was a little bit like daunting at first. It was like mid-bowling game, we're taking off the bumpers, try and get a strike. Because people are watching you, and if you don't look cool, well then God help you. That's how it feels to me. But I don't, as someone who like I feel like I always think of things like in a really like cinematic sense, like I'm like watching a movie in my head and storyboarding it out. And sometimes with D&D, it's like, well, I don't have that spell, so I can't do that cool thing, or like I don't know how to make that work with the rules. And with Thirsty Sword Lesbians, it's like, oh no, I can just like do that with it. I can't just say and then I kill you, obviously, but it's like within the rules of TSL, it's a little bit more wiggle room for you to like do that cinematic thing, the anime music video in your head that's been going since you were 13, like you can describe it now. That's how it felt to me. And it can be like daunting because it feels like, oh, you can do anything you want. Oh, well, if I can do anything I want, then like what do I do? And that can be it's like going from like a steady river to like now you are in the ocean and I can go any direction I want, but where do I go?
And also the tide is coming, so be careful.
And also the tide is coming. But it's also very exciting, and I think that it'll be nice starting out the next season like from the beginning playing Thirsty Sword Lesbians, instead of like switching mid-season, which was so much work behind the scenes to Liza and so many people, which again, thank you for all of that. But I'm glad it's a choice we made. I feel like it's been good for my like role-playing skills as a player. And also it's just like fun to try out new systems. Like beyond Thirsty Sword Lesbians, I now feel more equipped to jump into any role-playing game. Like playing Yasaba's Bed and Breakfast, which was a delight, eating a sugar cookie by a fireplace of a role-playing experience. Yeah. I think if I hadn't like switched systems before, because I was very much like only D&D, maybe like Kids on Brooms once. Trying different systems makes me feel more comfortable doing that. And I think that's just like a good and fun experience to like give like a smaller creators, like a chance on their game systems because they're actually incredibly sick and very cool. And speak to like different, storytelling elements. Again, thinking of like Yazaba's and how like cozy that is, and Thirsty Sword Lesbians, how like empowering and gay it is. Just like everything about it feels so like queer and like made for me. And I just don't, I as much as I liked D&D, it didn't feel like someone was like, well, let me make a game that Molly Schaefer is really going to love, which like Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which I have the book here, but like get a load of this, folks. Oh my god, I love it so much. And it's got like fat people in the book. I literally just opened the page. Yep. I did not plan this. Literally just opened the page, like, and oh my gosh, there's someone with like a body that looks like mine.
Well, and even in like the core like text of the book, there's a page about what it should look like when you're playing, and there's a whole statement from the creator about like, hey, if you want to invite like transphobia, racism, sexism into your game, then this is not the game for you. Like, this is inherently a system that is built to encompass all identities, all people, and bigotry has no place, which I think is incredible. And like, it was so refreshing to read that, especially given the very we'll use the word fraught history of Dungeons and Dragons and the larger system that we started playing with. So Katie Mae, what has it been like, GMing Thirsty Sword Lesbians, especially for this group of fat queer heroes?
I think that I owed it to like the responsibility I hold as being a storyteller in a visible place. I owed it to that amount of responsibility to take a serious look at the function violence holds in the story I tell. If you look at Dungeons and Dragons, it is a game that like prioritizes violence as your solution, and also like focuses on it as the core of what we're going to do today. And when you look at TSL and all of its move sets, even though the word sword is in the title, there is only one move that is strictly like sword fighting, right? And a host of others that are all ways to get as much plot advantage, as much story, as much action as like a D&D combat that doesn't prioritize I guess like death as end game, right? So what it does is it really provides the freedom for concepts of rehabilitation and redemption and other really important themes that the cast might choose to explore, and they don't have to worry about being penalized from a like statistic game crunchy standpoint, when they want to pursue those avenues, they know that they're working with a system that'll 100% support it, and that freedom as storytellers is important for me to provide. And so for those reasons, I felt it was super important to look at that switch, because we, just as people who are telling a story visibly, should want to support the system we're using with our whole hearts and our whole ass. And I can do that with TSL every day of the week.
Hell yeah. So, for other fat folks who are maybe new to the TTRPG space or who have been playing for a long time, since 6th grade perhaps, like Katie May, what advice would y'all offer fat players who want to center fat and queer heroes in their campaigns?
Make a fat PC, play with other fat people. That's been good for me. It's just that easy. No, that's just my first like gut answer is like play with other fat people. It's been great for me. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I like you a lot. So I've really enjoyed playing the table with other fat people. I'm sure someone will have a much better answer. I'm sure I'll think of something more.
I think that does make a difference though, like having, like, not being the only fat person in the room, right? Which, like, I've, for the majority of my life, like, I've had friends of all body sizes, right? But there is something that is incredibly magical about sharing a table where you are being so emotionally vulnerable with other fat people. Like, there's a spark to it that I don't think I'll ever be able to describe accurately.
Yeah, I would say if you're having a hard time finding that space, because you really don't want to feel like I'm that one fat person in the room, or hey, will you accept me at your table, and can feel so daunting, especially when you're new. I would say if you can't find that space that caters to you being able to be who you are, make that space. My one advice would be don't be afraid to create that space. If it's not there, pull up your chair and move them out of the way. Make that room for yourselves because you deserve that. And you have just as much right as everybody else who's making space for themselves and tables for themselves. If you can't find that community, please don't be afraid to make that community, because this has been one of the best decisions that I have made in my life. I love all of these people so much, and I could not imagine telling stories in a way that I'm able to now without them. Just do it. Just go do it.
I'm gonna pull directly from Katie May on this one because it was like, well, yeah, Death to Divinity is the first all fat, all queer TTRPG actual play, but we certainly don't want it to be the last. So, just if you, whether you want to just like pull up some chairs and have a game with your friends, in your house, or you want to, stream it. I mean, that's just do it, right? Like, that's the whole thing.
Make more fat queer art. That's a really long chant, but that's my new chant.
And this is like advice I would give myself, but I feel like if there is someone at your table being like fat phobic, I don't know. It's like I feel like I myself wish. I mean, I haven't dealt with it in quite some time for reasons we've been talking about. But like, I wish I'd like called it out in the moment. I know Katie May knows what I'm talking about. There was like a scene.
The memory just crashed back into my body.
So sorry. Just feel free to go ahead and bash that mind rat that I just stirred up. It was like Katie May was like, describe like, there's some like rude people at this party. What are they like? You know them. And another player was like, they're fat. And I remember being like, sorry? And I wish just like in that moment I'd been like, hey, can we like wind that back and maybe not do that? In the moment I was like quiet because I didn't want to make the vibe weird. And you know what? Feel free to make the vibe fucking weird if someone does that. Feel free to ruin the vibe if someone's being fat phobic. And this is something I again, advice I should take myself, because it just in my daily life sometimes if like I'll hear that, I'll be like, oh, well, don't make people feel weird. But I would like to maybe be comfortable making people feel weird for sucking shit, perhaps, you know?
Absolutely. Get weird about it for sure. Well, like
Yeah.
our table uses safety tools, right? And so like we have the ability to be like, hey, no, that was bad. That's got to stop right now. Or like, can we try that again? Like I remember very explicitly, like I think I used the word slave in a description in an episode, just like, you know, and Katie May was like, hey, let's use a different word. And I was like, absolutely. And re-rolled the whole line. You know what I mean? And so it's like we have that kind of built into our system. And I think that's helpful for other people as well. I think laying ground rules when you start of being like, hey, this world that we're creating, that we're not gonna have anti-fat attitudes here. Like we're not gonna have, fantasy racism. Like this particular type of fantasy creature, they're not evil because they're that type of fantasy creature. And I think that building that in from the jump is a really good way to like get ahead of it, because then when it does come up, you have the ability to be like, hey, that doesn't fit with what we're doing. And so I think that that's really helpful too. And I also will say, like, just from like a personal standpoint, I think occupying a world where it's like, okay, yes, like there's this fictional world that we've created where like anti-fatness, transphobia, those things don't exist. And if they do exist, they're not tolerated. It has allowed me to be more vocal in the outside world. So when somebody is like saying, something anti-fat in public, if I am either the recipient of it or I catch it, which sometimes I don't because I have terrible hearing, I'm able to go, hey, no, like that's not going to work. And then kind of like approach it, which has been really helpful and lovely. So you are muted.
I am, aren't I? So yeah, I think that I think we've spoken great to folks who are wanting to tread into the water. If you're standing in the water and are wondering how to do better, here is my advice. Being a good person in this space, and I think you understand what I'm saying. Being a person who can interact in intersectional communities well, and be a person in them. I think it's not about never fucking up. It's about having really robust systems for accountability and bettering. That is like the key. Safety tools is a huge part of that for us, right? Having consistent open communication, right? Huge for us. Being able to hear that you fucked up, huge for us. If you're bad at any of those things, highly suggest improving on highly suggest it. Those are all keys to like, because it's storytelling and it's so vulnerable. It's so bleeding heart. It's so your the trepidation of it is so vulnerable from person to person, and that vulnerability is earned and shared and cherished and nurtured, and your ability to do that is oftentimes the difference between a good story and a great story, and a great table and an incredible table. And I highly encourage the exploration of that evolution.
Beautifully said. Oh, Kita's in the chat. Kita, our beloved
Kita!
join us for this panel today, but please show Kita some love in chat because she's fantastic. And Winona, her character, is just such an all-around badass that we're so lucky to have in this game. And Transplanter's here too. Oh my goodness,
Oh
so many
my God.
friends. Hello, Transplanter. If y'all are not following Transplanter RPG, speaking of systems that like really, really actively approach and dismantle nasty tropes in classic TTRPG games, go give Transplanter a follow. The system that they're building, Connie Chang, their GM, is just like incredible at creating worlds where those things don't exist, and it's phenomenal. So that's pretty much it for us for the day. I don't know if anybody has any questions for us. If you do, throw them in chat. We'll answer them on our way out. But is there anything that anybody wants to add to our discussion before we wrap things up for the day?
Hey, it's never too late to add safety tools. You don't have to be
No.
in a brand new camp. Just add them. Just add them.
Just do
You
it.
get up and ready it running with safety tools 15 minutes before your game starts. That's all it takes.
Okay. We've got Cat Scratch Plays wants to know how to get into TTRPGs and where to go. You can start in our Discord if you'd like. We actually have a channel for folks who are looking for a game to play. The community in our Discord is really active. They're great. A lot of people are like TTRPG vets over there. Some people are new to the system, like to any of the systems. And so there's a lot of like collaboration and discussion of them, which I think is lovely. What do y'all think? How would you suggest getting into TTRPG?
Yeah, I feel like that's like a great, like just like a Discord that you're in for like another niche interest. Like, even if it's like another TTRPG show, that's like a great place, obviously, to find people who like play TTRPGs. But just, you know, like it's like hard to be like, just go make friends. But like there's ways you can like find like a little community and get a little game going. And like finding games that aren't so heavy on a GM for prep can be huge for getting a group together, because a lot of the times it's like, well, who wants to be like the DM? Like that can be hard to find. And Katie May, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like at least like Thirsty Sword Lesbians is like a little bit less like hugely daunting in terms of prep for GMing.
Yeah, I think a huge piece of advice is don't be afraid to be the GM. I think, you know, it will always be in GM crisis. We'll always need more. We'll always need people to rise to the occasion, to join the army, as it were. I think Start Playing Games is a great resource for people who are looking to get at a table. There's a lot of really cool, like, queer people who run games, who are devoted to giving you a very good experience over there. Highly recommend that if you're just looking to get at a table as soon as possible. Otherwise, just like getting in community, bring games to your community. That's like the best thing I can suggest.
And then our final audience question that I think we'll have time for before we head on out is from our community manager, Liza. Shout out to Liza. So what is one piece of advice for someone looking to make these changes at their tables but aren't necessarily sure where or how to start?
Rip the Band-Aid off. That's my primary advice. Just do it. I think there will always be someone who was so thankful that you were brave enough to start the conversation. And so that's always how I do it. I imagine a tiny person who might not even be real, just like a Victorian orphan being like, "Oh, thanks, sir. I was so afraid to start that conversation. You really did me a solid one." And then I'm fine.
There's so many rats in my mind. So many rats in my head. I can't bash them all.
Rats, sir. I couldn't do it.
I will also say,
that's how I do it.
Build off of that, if you are looking to add like safety tools specifically to your table, if you Google TTRPG safety toolkit, you'll pull up Kiana Shaw's any award-winning safety toolkit, which is something that we use. It implements a system where essentially like you lay out, hey, these things are okay with me, these things are not okay with me, and these things are okay with me if they don't happen to my character, stuff like that. And then you can like customize it even more and get into like the nitty gritty for your table. So like, for example, like we took that and something that we added to ours was, partner death. And then we had another one where it was like, we added, things with too many legs, and those we don't like. And so that's really helpful, I think.
I don't know if you still have it up on Twitter, Katie May, but I'm pretty sure like Katie May, you have like a Notion checklist. I use that for like my personal like offline game. That was hugely helpful. Again, mostly people who have not played like a TTRPG before. That was like super easy for them to do. It's literally like a checklist of like, are you scared of slime? Check the box. We won't have slime in the game. So that was also very, very helpful. But super definitely helpful. Do those from the jump.
All right. So thank you for watching this panel, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you to my beautiful castmates for joining me for this. I always enjoy getting to talk to y'all about the show. And I know that it's a good bonding experience for us. So thank you, Gayming Live, for having us. And of course, thank you, Remag, for sponsoring this session. If you haven't heard, anyone who signs up to Remag and joins the gaming community before the end of October, so you have many, many days to do this, you're actually entered to win an Xbox Series X. So if you want to win an Xbox Series X, download the Remag app, which I think is available for both Android and iPhone, and then join the gaming community, and you might win one, which is great. You can scan the QR code also underneath us to do that. And then to check out what else is happening during Gaming Live, visit gamingmag.com/live, and also follow Gaming Mag on all socials. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really great time, and stay tuned because we will have announcements about our next season, hopefully very soon. So that's all for now. Have a great weekend, y'all. Thank you. Bye.